You think your car's fuel tank is impressive? It holds maybe 60 liters. A camel can store 200 liters of water and still walk 160 kilometers without breaking stride. No engine, no fuel stops, just flesh, blood, and evolution's most sophisticated water management system. But the Bedouins didn't just ride camels. They turned them into mobile reservoirs, portable pharmacies, and living compass systems. In a landscape where a single wrong turn meant death, the camel wasn't just transportation, it was survival technology with a heartbeat. For over 4,000 years, Bedouins built their entire existence around these creatures. They didn't domesticate camels, they formed a partnership. The desert taught both species the same lesson: water is life, and whoever controls it survives. The Bedouins learned to read camels like living gauges, monitoring hydration levels, predicting weather, and finding water sources that satellites still can't detect today. That a camel's body is a masterpiece of water conservation. While humans lose water through every breath, every step, every drop of sweat, camels have evolved to be misers, hoarding moisture like liquid gold. In a place where the air itself steals water from your lungs, where the sand burns through leather soles, where shade is worth more than silver, the camel walks unbothered. It doesn't fight the desert. It has become the desert. Their secret starts with the blood. Human blood thickens dangerously when we lose just 10% of our body water. Our circulation slows. Our organs shut down. Our brains fog over. Death follows quickly. A camel can lose 40%, nearly half its body weight in water, and still function normally. Still think. Still walk. Still carry a full load across burning sand. The difference lies in their blood cells. Human red blood cells are perfectly round, like tiny donuts. When blood thickens during dehydration, these rigid circles jam together like coins in a narrow slot. Blood flow stops. Organs starve. The system crashes. But camel blood cells are oval-shaped, flexible, squeezable, adaptive. When water gets scarce and blood vessels narrow, these cells compress and slide through gaps that would block human circulation entirely. The camel stays conscious, alert, and moving even when dehydration would kill any other mammal in hours. The hump isn't a water tank. That's the most persistent myth about camels. Cut one open and you won't find a reservoir. You'll find fat. Pure, concentrated fat. Up to 80 pounds of energy storage, packed into a single mass on the camel's back. But here's where the real genius reveals itself. As that fat burns during long journeys without food, it doesn't just provide calories. It produces water through cellular metabolism. The chemistry is elegant. 1 pound of fat, when metabolized completely, creates over a pint of pure water. It's not extracted water. It's manufactured water, created molecule by molecule as fat cells break down into energy. The hump is actually a water generator, constantly producing fresh liquid as the camel travels. When food is scarce and water is gone, the camel literally drinks from its own body fat. But the real magic happens deeper inside, in organs most people never think about. Camel kidneys don't just filter blood, they squeeze it. Human kidneys produce urine that's roughly as salty as our blood. We waste water to flush out toxins. Camel kidneys can concentrate urine to twice the saltiness of seawater. They extract every possible molecule of water from waste before expelling it. What comes out is syrup thick, dark as motor oil, and almost pure waste. Not a drop of precious water is lost. Their intestines perform similar miracles. While human intestines absorb about 80% of water from food waste, camel intestines reabsorb over 95%. They squeeze moisture from digested matter so thoroughly that their dung comes out nearly dry, like compressed sawdust mixed with straw. You can burn fresh camel dung like wood. There's almost no water left in it to evaporate. Even their skin participates in water conservation. Human skin loses moisture constantly through microscopic pores. We leak water just by existing. Camel skin is almost impermeable when hydrated, creating a living barrier against moisture loss. Their thick hide doesn't just protect against thorns and sun, it seals in every drop of internal water. When a dehydrated camel finally reaches water after days or weeks of desert travel, something extraordinary happens. The animal becomes a biological pump. In just 10 minutes, it can drink 200 liters, enough water to fill 4 standard bathtubs. A human drinking that much water that fast would die from water intoxication. The camel's blood chemistry barely fluctuates. Their stomach isn't one compartment like ours. It's a complex system of interconnected chambers that can expand like balloons. As water pours in, these chambers stretch to accommodate massive volumes without rupturing or causing internal damage. The camel's blood volume can increase by 40% almost instantly, going from dangerously thick to perfectly fluid in minutes. Within hours, they're fully restored to peak condition. No recovery time needed. No gradual rehydration process. Just drink, restore, and continue. The Bedouins learned to read these living water gauges with extraordinary precision. They could predict exactly when their camel needed water, often days before the animal showed obvious signs of thirst. A camel's urine color revealed hydration levels like a biological dipstick. Dark and thick mint water was running low. Light and flowing mint reserves were adequate. They tested skin tension by pinching the loose skin on the camel's neck. Well-hydrated skin snapped back instantly. Dehydrated skin stayed pinched, forming a small tent that slowly flattened. The speed of that recovery told them exactly how much water remained in the animal's system. Even the camel's behavior became a hydration meter. A camel with adequate water reserves moved steadily, breathed normally, and showed interest in food. A dehydrated camel moved sluggishly, breathed rapidly through its mouth, and ignored even the sweetest grass. But most importantly, a severely dehydrated camel would begin looking toward water sources, turning its head, sniffing the air, becoming restless when the caravan moved away from moisture. The Bedouins could read these signals days before the camel reached critical dehydration. This early warning system meant the difference between life and death in the trackless desert. They knew when to push forward to reach known water sources, when to dig for underground springs, and when to sacrifice precious stored water to keep their living reservoir functioning. The partnership was total. The camel provided biological water storage and conservation technology that no human engineering could match. The Bedouins provided intelligence, planning, and protection. Together, they turned the world's most water-scarce environment into a navigable highway system. The camel wasn't just carrying water, it was water, walking on four legs across the burning sand in the desert. Weather isn't just uncomfortable, it's lethal. Sandstorms that appear in minutes and last for days, burying entire caravans under moving dunes. Temperature drops that plunge from 50 degrees Celsius at sunset to near freezing before dawn, killing the unprepared in their sleep. Flash floods that turn dry valleys into raging torrents, drowning travelers who thought they were safe on solid ground. To survive in such extremes, you need to predict the unpredictable. The Bedouins had no satellites scanning cloud formations from space, no radar tracking storm systems across continents, no meteorological stations broadcasting warnings across radio waves. They had something far more sophisticated. A camel's senses, evolved over millions of years to detect atmospheric changes that human instruments still struggle to measure. That a camel can smell water from 50 kilometers away. That distance isn't metaphorical, it's measurable. Research has confirmed that camels can detect moisture gradients in air that contain less than 1 part per million of water vapor. Their nostrils aren't just breathing apparatus, they're biological sensors, constantly sampling microscopic particles carried on desert winds. The mechanics are extraordinary. A camel's nose contains over 1,000 square centimeters of sensory membrane, folded into complex chambers that trap and analyze airborne molecules. When they breathe in, air doesn't flow straight to their lungs. It spirals through these chambers, giving specialized cells time to identify every chemical signature carried on the wind. They can distinguish between different types of water sources by scent alone. Underground springs smell different from surface pools. Recent rainfall carries distinct molecular markers. Even morning dew has its own chemical signature. A camel detecting water will lift its head in a specific direction and maintain that position for several seconds. Not casual curiosity, but precise biological triangulation of a distant moisture source. The Bedouins learned to read these signals with life or death precision. When their camel suddenly stopped, raised its head, and pointed toward empty horizon, they paid attention. Sometimes the animal was detecting water sources 2 days' travel away. oases invisible to human eyes, underground springs with no surface indication, or seasonal pools that only appeared after rare desert rains. But water detection was just the beginning. Camels sense barometric pressure changes hours before storms develop. Their inner ears contain specialized organs that detect minute atmospheric variations, pressure drops so subtle that modern weather instruments need electronic calibration to measure them. When a sandstorm is building 100 kilometers away, a camel knows. When temperature systems are shifting along distant mountain ranges, a camel feels the change. The signals manifest in behavior that Bedouins learn to interpret like a meteorological code. If their camel became restless at sunset, refusing to settle in the usual sleeping position, a sandstorm was approaching during the night. If it started breathing differently, short, rapid breaths instead of deep, slow ones, humidity was dropping to dangerous levels. If it began pawing the ground or shifting its weight from foot to foot, underground vibrations were indicating seismic activity or distant thunder. During sandstorms, when visibility drops to zero and winds howl with the force of hurricanes, camels don't panic. They position themselves with their backs to the wind, lower their heads, and close specialized valves in their nostrils that seal completely against sand and dust. Their eyes secrete thick tears that wash away particles without losing precious moisture. They can breathe normally even when the air is thick enough to choke a human. More remarkably, they maintain their sense of direction throughout the chaos. While human travelers become completely disoriented in sandstorms, often walking in circles until they collapse from exhaustion, camels continue navigating toward their intended destination. They use infrasonic vibrations, sound frequencies below human hearing, that travel through the ground over vast distances. These low-frequency waves carry information about geographical features, water sources, and other landmarks that remain constant even when surface visibility disappears. The Bedouins learn to trust this navigation system completely. During severe sandstorms, they would wrap themselves completely in fabric, tie themselves to their camels, and let the animals guide them to safety. Fighting the storm, or trying to maintain human navigation, usually meant death. Trusting the camel's deeper senses meant survival. Temperature regulation in camels reveals another layer of meteorological sensitivity. Their body temperature fluctuates by 6 degrees Celsius throughout the day, from 34 degrees Celsius at dawn to 40 degrees Celsius at peak heat, without causing cellular damage. This isn't passive heat absorption. It's active thermal management, using the body itself as a heat sink during the day and radiating that stored heat during cool nights. They accomplish this through sophisticated blood flow regulation. During hot periods, blood vessels near the skin surface dilate, allowing body heat to radiate outward. During cool periods, these same vessels constrict, conserving core body temperature. The camel becomes a living thermostat, maintaining optimal internal conditions despite external temperature swings that would kill most mammals. Bedouins synchronize their own daily rhythms to these thermal patterns. When their camel sought shade and began panting lightly, they knew air temperature was approaching dangerous levels for human activity. When the animal's breathing became rapid and its neck began sweating, they knew immediate shelter was essential. When a camel started the characteristic head-weaving motion of severe heat stress, they knew death was approaching for any unprotected human. The animals also predicted seasonal weather changes with startling accuracy. Weeks before the rare desert rains arrived, camels would become more active, eating larger quantities of available vegetation and drinking more water when opportunities arose. They somehow sensed approaching weather systems that satellite meteorology was still learning to track. During these preparation periods, experienced Bedouins would adjust their own strategies accordingly. They stored extra water, reinforced their tents, and planned travel routes that would position them near high ground when the rains finally came. The camel's behavioral changes served as an early warning system for weather events that could be either life-saving or catastrophic, depending on preparation. Modern meteorology relies on instruments, data networks, and computational modeling to predict weather patterns. The Bedouin-camel partnership achieved similar results through biological sensitivity and human interpretation. The camel provided the sensors, capable of detecting atmospheric changes across multiple spectrums simultaneously. The Bedouin provided the intelligence, learning to distinguish between different types of environmental signals and respond appropriately to each. Together, they created a mobile weather station that could operate indefinitely in conditions that would destroy electronic equipment within hours. No power source needed. No maintenance required. No communication links to fail. Just millions of years of evolutionary adaptation, refined through generations of human observation and partnership. The system worked because both species understood a fundamental truth about desert survival. The environment gives warning signs to those capable of reading them. The desert doesn't attack without signals. It doesn't kill without providing escape routes. But those signs are subtle, brief, and often counterintuitive. Miss them, and death follows quickly. Read them correctly, and the deadliest environment on Earth becomes navigable. In the endless expanse of sand and stone, there are no emergency rooms. No pharmacies stocked with antibiotics and painkillers. No medical helicopters racing toward GPS coordinates. When illness strikes in the deep desert, you have two options: heal with what you carry, or die where you fall. The Bedouins chose a third path. They brought their pharmacy with them, walking on four legs and breathing through flared nostrils. The camel wasn't just transportation or water storage. It was a mobile medical kit, carrying remedies in its bloodstream, antibodies in its milk, and healing compounds in every part of its body. For thousands of years, Bedouin survival depended not just on reaching distant oases, but on staying healthy enough to make the journey. The camel provided both the means of travel and the medicine needed to survive it. Camel milk was the foundation of desert medicine, not because of tradition or ritual, but because of biochemistry. Unlike cow's milk, camel milk contains immunoglobulins that closely match human immune responses. These antibodies could fight infections that would prove fatal in the harsh desert environment, where even minor cuts could become life-threatening wounds. The milk stays fresh for days without refrigeration, even in temperatures exceeding 45 degrees Celsius. This isn't due to preservatives or processing, it's natural chemistry. Camel milk contains lactoferrin, a protein that binds iron and prevents bacterial growth. It has natural hydrogen peroxide compounds that sterilize the milk from within. Most remarkably, it contains bacteriophages, microscopic viruses that specifically target harmful bacteria while leaving beneficial microorganisms untouched. When fever struck during desert crossings, Bedouins would mix warm camel milk with crushed dates, creating a medicinal drink that addressed multiple biological needs simultaneously. The milk provided hydration without triggering the rapid water loss that plain water often caused in fevered patients. The natural sugars in dates provided immediate energy without requiring complex digestion. The combination delivered electrolytes, immune-boosting compounds, and steady calories. Everything needed to fight infection while maintaining strength for continued travel. For digestive emergencies, dysentery, food poisoning, or severe dehydration, Bedouins used fresh camel urine. To modern sensibilities, this seems primitive or desperate, but the chemistry tells a different story. Camel urine emerges sterile from a healthy animal, containing concentrated minerals, uric acid compounds, and metabolic byproducts that research has confirmed effective against certain bacterial infections. The urine's high salt content helps restore electrolyte balance in severely dehydrated patients. Its natural antibiotics can halt intestinal infections that cause deadly fluid loss. Most importantly, it provides immediate liquid replacement when water supplies are exhausted and death is imminent. The practice wasn't born from ignorance. It developed because it worked, saving lives when no other options existed, in extreme emergencies. When both water and camel urine were insufficient, Bedouins would consume small quantities of fresh camel blood. This wasn't ritual sacrifice. It was emergency transfusion technology. Camel blood contains water, minerals, proteins, and clotting factors that can stabilize a dying human long enough to reach proper medical care or more substantial resources. The procedure required precise knowledge and careful execution. Too much blood consumption causes iron poisoning and kidney damage. Too little provides no benefit. The Bedouins learned to extract just enough, usually no more than a few ounces, to provide critical hydration and nutrients without harming either the camel or the patient. The camel could lose this small amount without significant impact, but for a human facing imminent death from dehydration, Those ounces meant survival. Fat from the camel's hump served dual purposes as both emergency food and topical medicine. Applied to cuts, burns, and abrasions, it created a protective barrier against sand, wind, and infection. The fat's composition includes natural antimicrobial compounds and healing accelerators that promote tissue regeneration. In the desert, where even minor wounds can become infected and life-threatening, this biological bandage often made the difference between recovery and amputation. The fat remained effective in extreme temperatures, neither melting completely in heat nor hardening dangerously in cold. It stayed pliable and protective across the full range of desert temperature swings, providing consistent wound care regardless of environmental conditions. Modern petroleum-based ointments often fail in such extremes, either liquefying in heat or becoming too solid to apply in cold. But perhaps most importantly, camels served as early warning systems for human illness. Their acute sense of smell could detect chemical changes in human body odor that indicated developing medical problems. A camel becoming agitated around a specific person often meant that individual was developing heat exhaustion, dehydration, or infection, sometimes days before the person felt symptoms. Experienced Bedouin caravan leaders learned to watch their camels' reactions to family members and travelers. If a camel consistently avoided someone or showed stress signals in their presence, that person received extra attention and preventive care. If a camel became unusually protective of someone, standing closer, showing more concern, that person was likely fighting off illness and needed support. The relationship extended beyond medical utility into genuine emotional and psychological support. Camels mourn. They're human companions, sometimes refusing food for days after a handler's death. They recognize individual humans by voice, scent, and even gait, maintaining emotional bonds that span years and vast distances. They show stress when separated from familiar handlers and contentment when reunited. This emotional connection had practical medical applications. Stress and psychological trauma can be deadly in survival situations, triggering panic, poor decision-making, and physical breakdown. The presence of a trusted camel provided psychological stability during medical crises. Patients recovered faster when their familiar camel remained nearby. Children separated from family members could be comforted by a familiar animal's presence. The camels also helped diagnose psychological conditions that were just as dangerous as physical ailments. Depression and despair killed desert travelers as surely as dehydration or heat stroke. People who had given up hope would often show behavioral changes that camels detected before human observers noticed them. A camel refusing to respond to someone's commands, or becoming unusually gentle with them, often indicated that person was sliding toward dangerous psychological breakdown. Bedouin medicine wasn't primitive folk healing. It was sophisticated biotechnology, using living systems to diagnose, treat, and prevent medical emergencies in conditions where conventional medicine would be impossible to practice. The camel provided the raw materials, milk, blood, urine, fat, and behavioral indicators, while human knowledge provided the processing, dosing, and application techniques. The system worked because both species evolved in the same harsh environment, developing complementary survival mechanisms. The camel's biology provided what human physiology lacked. Human intelligence guided the application of camel-derived medicines. Together, they created a medical system that could function indefinitely in complete isolation from civilization. Modern emergency medicine relies on sterile facilities, electrical power, complex supply chains, and rapid transportation to advanced facilities. Bedouin medicine achieved similar results using only what could be carried on a camel's back and produced by the camel's body. No external power required. No supply chain needed. No facility beyond a patch of shade under the desert sun. The medicines were always fresh, always available, and perfectly adapted to treating conditions that arose in their specific environment. The living pharmacy never ran out of stock, never expired, and never required replacement. As long as the camel remained healthy, the medical system remained functional. And the practices that kept camels healthy simultaneously kept humans healthy, an integrated approach to survival that modern medicine is still learning to appreciate. In a landscape without roads, without signposts, without any permanent landmarks except the shifting positions of stars, navigation becomes the difference between life and death. One wrong turn in the trackless desert can lead a caravan hundreds of kilometers from water, food, and safety. No rescue teams patrol these vast emptiness. No satellite phones work when solar storms disrupt signals. Get lost here, and death becomes not just possible, but inevitable. The Bedouins faced this challenge for millennia, crossing territories larger than most modern countries with nothing but sand, stone, and sky for guidance. They developed navigation techniques so sophisticated that European explorers, equipped with magnetic compasses and detailed maps, regularly became lost and died in areas where Bedouin children could find their way home blindfolded. Their secret wasn't superior human navigation skills. It was partnership with an animal that had evolved navigation systems no human technology could match until the satellite age. Camels don't just remember directions. They remember landscapes. They internalize terrain, water sources, seasonal changes, and danger zones into mental maps that span thousands of square kilometers and remain accurate across decades of desert travel. The foundation of camel navigation lies in magnetic sensitivity. Like migratory birds and sea turtles, camels can sense Earth's magnetic field through specialized cells in their brains. But unlike other magnetic navigators, camels combine this basic directional sense with dozens of additional inputs, creating a biological GPS system that functions in conditions where electronic equipment fails completely. They read the desert through ground vibrations that travel through their padded feet. Different geological formations produce distinct seismic signatures, rocky outcrops, underground water, sand composition, even buried ruins create unique vibration patterns. A camel walking across seemingly uniform desert is actually reading a detailed underground map through its feet, distinguishing between dozens of different terrain types that appear identical to human senses. Their navigation includes stars too dim for reliable human observation, creating reference grids across the entire visible sky. But the most remarkable aspect of camel navigation is inherited route memory. Young camels learn pathways not just from their own experience, but from genetic memories passed down through generations. Routes traveled by ancestors become encoded in neurological patterns that guide descendants across terrain they've never personally explored. The Bedouins learned to distinguish between different types of camel navigation behavior. A camel walking with confident, steady pace across unmarked desert was following familiar routes, either personally remembered or ancestrally inherited. These animals could be trusted completely to reach intended destinations, even when human navigation failed. That a camel showing uncertainty, hesitating, changing direction, testing different paths, was exploring new territory or had encountered changes in familiar landmarks. During these periods, the Bedouins provided more active guidance while allowing the animal to develop new route memories for future use. Different camel breeds developed different navigation specialties based on their historical uses. Racing camels, bred for speed across familiar territories, could cover 160 kilometers per day while maintaining precise directional accuracy. They memorized high-speed routes between major oases, calculating optimal paths that balance speed with water availability. Pack camels, bred for carrying heavy loads across varied terrain, developed more detailed terrain analysis abilities. They could evaluate ground stability, assess weather conditions, and select routes that minimized energy expenditure while maximizing safety. These animals avoided dangerous terrain that racing camels might traverse successfully, but pack animals would find treacherous. War camels possessed entirely different navigation skills. Bred for rapid deployment and tactical mobility, they could navigate at night, during sandstorms, and across battlefields where normal landmarks had been destroyed. They memorized multiple routes to the same destinations, allowing military forces to avoid predictable travel patterns and enemy ambushes. The most prized animals were the pathfinders, camels with exceptional navigation abilities that exceeded even their breed's normal capabilities. These rare animals could find their way home from distances exceeding 500 kilometers, navigate during severe weather that disoriented other camels, and discover new water sources by following subtle environmental clues invisible to human observation. Pathfinder camels were never sold, rarely bred outside their family groups, and passed down through tribal generations like precious heirlooms. A single pathfinder could mean the difference between a thriving tribe and a lost one. These animals enabled exploration of new territories, establishment of trade routes, and survival during emergencies when normal navigation methods failed. Training began before weaning. Young camels accompanied every journey, learning routes, water sources, seasonal variations, and emergency alternatives. By adulthood, they carried comprehensive mental maps covering territories larger than many modern states. They knew which oases held water during which seasons, which routes remained passable during different weather conditions, and which paths avoided territorial conflicts with other tribes. The Bedouins didn't follow their camels blindly. They learned to interpret animal navigation signals, distinguishing between confidence and confusion, between recognition and exploration, between intentional route changes and disorientation. Master navigators could read their camel's body language like a compass, understanding when the animal was certain of direction, when it was making educated guesses, and when it was completely lost. This interpretive skill required years of experience with specific animals. Each camel had individual navigation quirks. Some were more cautious, others more adventurous. Some excelled at long-distance accuracy, but struggled with local terrain variations. Others navigated perfectly within familiar regions, but became confused in new territories. The human-camel navigation partnership combined the best of both species' abilities. Humans provided strategic intelligence, choosing destinations, evaluating political situations, planning for seasonal changes, and making risk assessments. Camels provided tactical execution, finding actual paths, detecting immediate dangers, maintaining direction through storms, and navigating toward water when human planning proved inadequate. Modern GPS systems require satellite networks, electronic receivers, digital maps, and electrical power. They failed during solar storms, in deep canyons, when equipment breaks, and when batteries die. The Bedouin camel navigation system operated continuously for thousands of years without any external support, power source, or maintenance beyond basic animal care. The biological system provided redundancy that electronic navigation lacks. If one sensory input failed, others compensated automatically. If environmental conditions disrupted normal navigation methods, alternative systems engaged seamlessly. If equipment was damaged or lost, the living navigation system continued functioning without interruption. Together, human intelligence and camel instinct transformed Earth's most hostile navigation environment into a reliable highway system. Trade routes spanning continents, family connections across vast distances, and cultural exchanges between distant civilizations, all made possible by a partnership between human strategic thinking and animal navigational instinct that no modern technology has successfully replicated.